Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Creation Matters podcast, where we are focused on sharing the reliability of the Bible, real science, and the gospel. I am your host, Preston Knapp. Today, we're going to be interviewing a longtime friend and partner with the ministry here, Dr. Ron Walser. You were an original member of our board, Creation Ministries of the Ozarks, when we got started way back in 2007. So
yes.
Very grateful to have you on the show today.
Glad to be here. I remember when the founders started, they brought me in on the board, and my advice was, because I had business background, it'll not work. Don't start it, And boy, am I glad I was wrong.
Yeah, the Lord surprised us all with that.
Yes, it's terrific.
And Ron, you have a background in chemistry, math, and
I have a hodgepodge of interest. I've always done what I wanted to do, but I graduated. I retired from New York with a large food company where we run a government-certified lab. But, chemistry doesn't stay in its lane very well. I have a background in microbiology and other things that we do involved in. So I've been more of a working individual than I'm taught at the university. It's easy to see those things in God's hand. I would say of an interest of that, when I started my first year in college chemistry, I had a post-Versalog slide roller. Do you guys know what that is? Do you remember what that is?
I do not,
And that's how we made all of our calculations, The calculators weren't advanced yet. Weren't invented yet.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
Learned something there. And it's my understanding that you originally started out as an atheist and then later came to faith in the Lord. Could you share a little bit of your journey
I won't
there?
wear you out on that, but I married my wife, and she was a believer, and I was jealous, and I wanted to convert her. So I decided I was going to disprove God. Unfortunately, I started in the book of John. I read and read and read and read, and I thought at one time I had the answer that to disprove God, and that was that he said, whoever believes in him shall be saved. And I knew Satan didn't believe in him. But in the Greek word, it's more than, credence. It means to you're all in, like a poker table, you're all in for it. And anyway, I ended up on my knees and received him at that time. And the mind that I had, the first thing I asked, I said, what's next? I didn't see churches doing much other than attending classes. So I started teaching my kids and evangelizing them. My son at that time was at Oberlin College, and I flew in there and gave him the gospel. And now I have 2 pastors in my family and so forth. So the Lord, he really, really brought me to my knees.
Wow. Did you have a church background growing up at all?
Never.
Okay.
None. I went, I think, one time with my aunt. I thought it was silly.
I see.
Yeah. And really, it had not been for creation, I wouldn't have had an interest in it. But Henry Morris was very popular in the information that he gave about Genesis and creation and so forth. And I started to get interested, and that's when I started to apply the science. And then that really kind of directed me in other science, what I wanted to learn and what I wanted to take.
Interesting. So what is it then about chemistry that really stands out when you look at it from a creation perspective?
Well, simple. A hydrogen atom. It's got an electron. It moves, orbits around its nucleus at 10 to the 15th power. That's 1 quadrillion every second. And it's been doing it for as long as the creation. When God said it, it's still not wearing out. It's still doing the same thing because it's stable. And the elegance of the design of an atom and is just incredible. And when you start to look at it from God's side of the viewpoint, you realize what we don't know.
Mm-hmm. That's a good way of putting it. Really, science is the study of us thinking. I think, it was John Newton said science is thinking God's thoughts after him or something like that. We're learning what he did.
God said he sits on the circle of the earth, and the rest of us are like grasshoppers. And that is so braggadocious on my part to even consider that. But,
Right.
Every hurdle you get over in science, there's another one greater and larger. We don't know.
Sure.
But at 88 years old, I know that when I cross the gate, I'm going to be told we've just introduced you to a beginner's class. Start right from the beginning.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so we're going to be talking a lot today about kind of the fundamental assumptions
Okay.
that evolutionists really have to believe in order to be evolution, and maybe kind of starting off with a 30,000-foot view. Oftentimes in the whole creation-evolution debate, it seems like that Christian creationists are categorized as the kind of dumb, non-scientific, just total faith-based individuals. And evolution, of course, has science, it's sophisticated, it has facts to back it up, and they are objective. So what would be your response to just kind of if someone approached you like that?
Naturalism is the biggest religion in the world today. The last I looked, 63% believe in it. And it's not a science, it's a philosophy. Once we get away from empirical science and have to rely on observation and experimentation, which is what, natural science or empirical science is, once we have to rely on that, then we're building a philosophy. And so anybody I talk to that brings that to me, I have to first of all explain to them, neither one of us can say without a question that we were there or observed it or can experiment with it. Then the question begins, what fits the best facts after the beginning? And so, no, it's not anybody that I tutor some young people too, but anybody that comes to them, the first thing you have to get over on the other side, you do not have a science on your side, and I won't be able to prove you from science that there is a God. I can give you that information to look at, but truth is based on who has the fewest discrepancies. That's what it is in a court of law. Every case presents their side, and then it's judged who has the fewest discrepancies. We have the fewest discrepancies in what we think is truth. And I deal with this all the time, too. There's a mistaken view by non-believers that majority makes truth, and that doesn't do any good.
Yeah, that is a big one. And people will bring that up as far as, well, the majority of scientists believe this, so it must be right.
Yeah.
The majority of scientists have believed a lot of things in the past that we no longer hold to today. So, but yeah, I like the fact that you point out that it really comes down to neither side has unchallenged facts.
Yeah, that's good to bring up to them too. I can't prove it to you. Right. But let me give you some information. You share your information with me, but know that we're not talking about pure science.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we both have beliefs that influence how we view the evidence. Yeah. So, very good. All right, so one of the assumptions that evolutionists have is that matter and energy came from nothing, or it has always existed.
Yeah.
How scientific is that?
Well, the physicists referred to it as a vacuum, a quantum vacuum. Doesn't mean it doesn't have things in it. What they call nothing. Now, you and I call nothing from the Bible. In the beginning, God created the heaven in the beginning, and there was nothing. But the nothing that they're talking about has energy in it. It has subatomic particles. It has fluctuation. It has matter and antimatter coming and going in with it, quarks and pair quarks that annihilate one another. It has forces like the electromagnetic force, and so it's not nothing. But nothing comes from nothing can come from absolute nothing. But they start with that, and they bring that in as this is nothing to us. But here's the most important thing. The most important thing is in their nothing is God's law, the lawmaker. He makes those functions. He makes matter go from antimatter, from quarks to antiquarks. He makes those things function. The field, the forces in the field, all of those things that are in there are God laws. They have to do them. They can't break. And so when we start with that, they didn't start with nothing. We start with nothing, and nothing from our nothing is not going to bring anything, and neither is theirs, by the way, because it's not programmed to do it.
Right. Wow. Yeah, that's a good way of putting that. I hadn't really thought about the fact that, they are borrowing from they're borrowing from God's laws.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're assuming those laws we'll kind of cover this a little later, but they're assuming that energy and matter started off governed with laws.
Oh, yeah. That's a huge assumption, isn't it?
It is.
That the laws are already in place. We're going to borrow that now, and we're going to build from that. No, you start with nothing. If they start from nothing, it makes no sense at all.
Mm-hmm. And, of course, they can't go back to absolute nothing.
No.
Because that doesn't work.
We don't have that situation here on planet Earth now where there's nothing. It's either a quantum fluctuation or a quantum vacuum where nothing exists. We don't have where there's nothing in there.
Mm-hmm. And if we can't demonstrate anyway scientifically how energy has always existed, then it's an assumption.
Yeah. Well, and here's, while we're on that subject too, the thing that's always interesting. Whenever we're looking at something in the past that's not been observed or we haven't experimented with, we set preconditions of what they are because we want a certain outcome. So, in the Miller-Urey experiment, they set what chemicals were involved in that and what was going to be the reaction. And so when atheists come to me to tell me that story, what are the presumptions, the presuppositions that they have to start with? You can't develop those because we don't know what they were. We don't know what the portions were. And when in 1956, when the Miller-Urey experiment, the world bragged that they'd produced life in a bottle. They actually produced blob in a bottle because there was no DNA to drive the system forward. They had the hardware, but they didn't have the software. And as you know, if you don't have software on your laptop, you get nowhere. And that's the problem, understanding the connection between those two.
Yeah. And, of course, the idea, some have the idea that the universe, of course, has always been in existence. But isn't that just, instead of a belief in an eternal God, isn't that just a belief in an eternal laboratory, basically?
Yeah, but of course, when Hubble came up with the telescope, that put that to an end. Even Einstein wanted to go look through it and see, when we know that we saw the red shifting of the galaxies, it was moving away, we knew it had a beginning, we know it will have an end. The universe will eventually die of unless there's intervention, it'll die a heat death. And we know that it's, the law of entropy, one of the most solid foundations we have in science, it is ending itself. Now, if it were eternal, it would already not be here.
Good point.
It would be gone. So the two things, I want to start with nothing, but my nothing is stacked with God's law, God's hardware, and I want to go to the other extreme and say, well, maybe it was always there, but if it was always there in the law of entropy, then it wouldn't exist in our time. It'd already be gone. So yeah, either way, that's a dead end issue for evolutionists.
For sure. Yeah. All right. What about the idea of complexity and order, and how that can come from simplicity and chaos?
Yeah. Well, I think in Turek and Geisler's book, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. They did a good job of telling just the anthroposophic principles, just how precise and the precision has to be in order to create these things. But not only to create them, to keep them in line. I know that the bonding angle on a hydrogen H2O, bonding angle has to be at 104.5, or you don't have water. So the bonding has to be perfect. So not only does there have to be precision, but the precision has to be maintained. There is nothing that's going to come in out of chaos and be able to match that. You don't, on the strong nuclear force, you just have to be off just a minuscule, and atoms won't hold together. So,
wow. Yeah, can you give an example of something that the evolutionists would like to point to? Of course, they always say that life and everything started simple and became more complex over time. But what would be an example of something that they would call simple, and yet it's still overwhelmingly complex?
Something that's called simple. Well, we see horizontal evolution. If you keep, it goes back to Genesis 30, when Jacob bred certain goats a certain way. Frank Perdue made bigger-breasted chickens because he skewed the gene pool.
Sure.
And we see that. And they'll talk about that as a horizontal evolution. If horizontal evolution must be right, then vertical evolution must be right, too. In other words, speciation. We don't argue with it. You keep breeding poodles in a certain way, and you're going to get a certain looking poodle.
Sure.
But at the same time, you're not going to get a giraffe or anything. For example, when we think about reptiles or dinosaurs putting on feathers, you can't do that until you get the new information, and we have no case where we've seen added new information. The only downward is that downward mutations are downward because it skipped lost information.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a good lead into our next point, where we're going to talk about the driving forces behind evolution, mutation, selection, isolation, and then mixing. And all of this taking place over a long time.
Well,
it's like, okay, like you said, I have some animals, and I'm involved in agriculture and stuff, and yeah, we can see where you can put different dogs together and you can get a new breed of dog.
Exchange of information.
Yeah, we're exchanging, we're swapping out different
Sure.
things. But to ever have an example where mutation led to new information, I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, it has. It's always a downward mutation. You
Right.
can make tsetse flies with curved wings. You can't make them. Superior. You can't make a squirrel able to leap out of a tree and glide. I mean, the bridge work would be impossible to cover over decades trying to learn to fly for a squirrel. You have to have everything in place. It's the irreducible complexity. It has to all be in place at one time for it to work. Michael Behe and his explanation of the mousetrap is a good one there. But a system works with components, and all of the components are organized, and they have to be in sync with one another. The minute you have one of those components acting as a rogue, then the system fails. If my car engine moves and the back wheels aren't connected with the drive shaft, the back wheels won't turn. So in every system, it's the integration, and the integration tells us of organization and intelligence and intelligence design. But I don't know if you want to talk it now, but evolution is dead before it ever starts because of when we don't have things to borrow from, like we do in you're talking about in your animals and so forth. When we have to make something from scratch, and we have no chaining mechanism or no mutations available, then the odds get incredibly large for the chances, because now we're all chance, aren't we? There's no mutations. We're all chance. And as Hoyle earlier forecasted, 1 in 10 to the 40,000th power. And I don't know if you do a lot on scientific numbers, but you have an idea what that kind of number represents. We estimate that there's 10 to the 80th power nucleus or atoms in the universe, 10 to the 80th power. When we see odds like 1 in 10 to the 40,000th power, let me tell you what that would be in a practical way.
Okay.
It would be like taking every grain of sand on all the beaches of the world and numbering them. And then you draw out, after they're mixed up again, you draw out the one that's numbered that you chose. But then you have to do it 500 times in a row. Oh. That's the odds of creating something. So evolution is dead before it gets started. Now, you're familiar with what Harvard's been doing since about 2000, their First Life Initiative program. Oh, they started that in the first year. I read the PhD that took that over, said, we'll solve this in a year's time. 20 years later, they're no closer, because you can't make that work in 4.54 billion years. Chance after chance after chance. You can't make the first simple life form. And if you can't get the simple life form, it's got nothing to evolve into. Nothing.
Right. And I think it's good to just point out here that evolution requires so many miracles in order to be practical that it makes creation look like child's play.
Within the body, I think there's like 23 or 24 different systems. They're so integrated.
Right.
And not one of them is any good unless it's matched up with something else. The minute I see food, already the digestive system starts to work. My mouth starts to salivate. It's getting ready to receive the foods. And all that in the system is all connected. And we got that coming in free of charge, you know.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing to see how, like you said, you get one of these systems, and without them all being able to coordinate and work together, and to think how each of those systems could have evolved independently or through necessity of use. Sure. It's like, but if it wasn't there, it didn't know it needed necessity of use. It just becomes a cascading problem.
And so many unanswered questions. In a U-235 atom, we've got 92 protons. 92 protons are somehow held behind an mass basis, and they're held together. They don't repel each other until you trigger that amount, and then we can blow up Nagasaki or Hiroshima. And we only use 1% of it. And I think the latest calculations, if we could, from a pound of matter, release all of the energy that's holding a pound of matter together, it would feed a family of 4 for 140,000 years. That's how much God's got that. Keep in mind, that's 100%. And keep in mind, I think the big bomb, or little boy, was 1.14 yield that they got from that release, and it blew up all kinds of things. So we have no idea. We are really, truly grasshoppers in God's intellectual scheme of things.
For sure.
But the problem is that the arrogance that we take that we might know something, you know.
All right, then. So here's another assumption. We've kind of danced around this, but we'll go ahead and address it specifically. The idea that life came from non-life.
Yeah. Inorganic chemistry to organic chemistry.
Yeah.
And the problem is with inorganic chemistry, it doesn't have DNA. You and I are hardware. We are a hardware, and we need software. When God said, I'll breathe life into this thing, he breathed in the software. And when we die, by the way, all the hardware is going to be in place. Sure. Every cell is there working, but there's nothing to fire the system anymore, no information. Information doesn't weigh anything. It has no mass. And so in a case like that, to imagine that life could come from non-life, there has to be a drive from it. But as I did say this, we know that after experiment, we haven't been able to make that first simple life form. Now, if you want to have some fun, you look on Harvard's webpage, see what their initiative, they think they call it First Life Initiative Program. Okay. They've been working on it for 20 years now, and they will tout that when they started, they said, we will solve the question of how life came from non-life. That was 25 years ago. When you look on their webpage, they will tout all these roads they made, the headways they made, but they haven't found the answer yet. And why do they? Well, if they need grant money, every year they're going to have a success, but It's not answering the problem that they said they were going to answer. And and they've been working at you're talking to me, but there's a lot of smart people down at Harvard that have been working on this for 25 years now, and they don't have a clue either. So I guess we don't know how to make life from non-life. The best scientists in the world.
Yeah, I was going to just point that out, that Harvard has some very intelligent minds.
They're working on that thing hard, but no. Life can't come from, when you start with inorganic chemistry with no carbon in it, you're not going to have the DNA to drive the system forward. As I said in the Miller-Urey experiment, they produced amino acids in a bottle, blob in a bottle, but there wasn't anything to take it to the next step. Sure. That's incredible omission of knowing what I need. And keep in mind, when we see odds on what it takes to produce something, usually the idea that the DNA is left out of the equation. It's like matter can somehow do it on its own. But the two have to work in unison. You got the laptop with hardware, you got the DNA as software, and the two have to work in concert to produce anything. So,
right. And then it's my understanding also that just because you have DNA, that's not enough.
Oh, no.
Now you have to have RNA.
Yes, that's right.
You have to have other mechanisms to implement the information that's there.
The RNA gathers the material. The DNA is kind of like the yard boss supervising it. Yeah. They all work in concert. We don't see systems without coordination and integration. any place in God's scheme of things.
Right. Yeah, that's something I really actually have not thought a whole lot about until just right now. I was talking about this, how all the different systems that have to work together.
Oh, yeah.
For life to be possible, for life to be maintained, like we mentioned earlier.
One rogue element of a system, and the system fails.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a symphony with the best orchestra in the world. They're all playing the right note at the right time and the right beat. That's what a system is.
Yeah. So it really does bring glory to God when we realize He spoke all of that into existence.
Yeah. Every time I think I got over one hurdle, I see another one even taller than the one I just left. I give you a good example. One of the nursing home at the ministry, I teach about what happens to a caterpillar. You might be interested in this. Of course, the caterpillar hides himself, and then he's liquefied, basically.
Right.
And then the information in there, he turns into a beautiful butterfly. Got different information when he started. And the scientists will tell you that's because they have these imaginal cells that are in there that were started 260 million years ago. See, that's out of sight now.
Sure.
But that's the presupposition, and that allows the caterpillar to do his magic. I had a better answer for that,
Right, he was programmed to do it.
He was programmed to do it.
Yeah. All right, how about uniformitarianism? For those who maybe aren't familiar with the term, it's basically the idea that the present is the key to the past. They use this a lot with geology, although it applies to other fields of science also. But basically, present-day processes have been occurring at the same rate, same fashion, same type throughout all of time.
Yeah, well, I'm going to cover two things in that one.
All right.
Of course, in the latter part of the 18th century was James Hutton. James Hutton decided that this was true, that you could look at the present and see, and you'd know what happened in the past. So what he did was he observed some rocks being eroded from a little bit of water, and he calculated the rates, and he said the rate will always be the same, and that's what worked. Now, then he said, what he had to do to change that was he denied the worldwide flood. Mm-hmm. And the reason he denied the flood, because it would mess up the uniformitarianism. Oh. So we see in 2 Peter said, in the last days scoffers will come, and they'll deny the flood. So he picked up by Charles Lyell in the 19th century, that there was no flood, we had no flood, and therefore everything has been uniform as it has always been in the past. Now, they didn't see what happened in St. Helens in 1980. Right. Had they been privy to that information, they would see what looked like the period of eons takes place in a single afternoon. But they didn't see that. They only observed what happened over their small measurement time. So, but that's always the case with that idea. Now, we could use uniformitarianism today. We could say that we're going to make three huge assumptions. We're going to assume that we started with the same, that, in any kind of dating, radiometric dating, we always believe that we start with only parent elements, and then they deteriorate, they get down to daughter elements, and that nothing's entered. It's a closed
system.
Yeah, but we don't have closed systems. But anyway, that there is a closed system, and therefore all we have to do is measure the ratio, and we know these huge assumptions that we make. But we know the flood itself eliminated the possibility of uniformitarianism. But people put a lot of faith in radiometric dating, and, people who are strong Christians say, well, that must be true, that must be a fact. But, it's the variables aren't right. If I look at the end of a river and I see a delta and I measure how big it is, and I assume that the flow of the river was always the same, and the density of sediment in the river was always the same, then I come up with these calculations. But uniformitarianism, it doesn't. There's always interruptions to those places. Mm-hmm. And you probably know we would like to use as an argument would be the decay of the magnetic decay of the Earth.
Right.
If we look at that, we've been taking, 180 or 200 years, we've been looking at that. And if we work that backwards, it looks like that, the Earth couldn't be any more than 10,000 years older, it would melt.
Exactly.
But we don't see uniformitarianism in there. But a lot of people, that's still, they, even though most scientists have left it long ago,
Oh, yeah.
you cannot look at something in the present and assume that it was uniformly dealt with forever and ever.
Right. And yeah, like you said, scientists today are slowly and reluctantly coming to the view that, catastrophism in geology actually is a much better explanation for
well,
what we see.
One of the atheists I argued, he when we talk about seashells on Mount Everest,
Right.
Fossils, he said Mount Everest is always pushing up. It's always pushing up. It does. It pushes up every year about less than the thickness of a credit card. So
Okay.
yeah, so he's right. I mean, if that's the belief system that he starts with, it's not science. It's a belief system. It's philosophy.
Right.
But
yeah, and just to emphasize, the big problem with uniformitarianism is that we cannot prove that rates have always been the same. If we're talking about things we can observe,
yeah,
it might seem plausible that, okay, this river has always been eroding the rocks at this rate because that's what we see today, but you can't prove that.
No.
So it's not science.
No, it's not science.
It is an assumption.
It is philosophy.
And of course, now that we see that, yes, evolutionists do make lots of assumptions when it comes to the origin of life, present-day processes, complexity, just all kinds of things. They have to make these faith assumptions.
Yeah.
So really, a debate over science, or what is often termed as science, what people think of as science, really comes down to a debate over who do we put our faith in.
Yeah, sure.
Is it naturalism or is it Almighty God?
Yeah.
And I would submit that it's more logical to assume that there was a supreme being who lovingly created this world, created this universe, who desired fellowship with us, so he created us in his image and walked with us, gave us everything we needed. The first people there, Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, gave them everything that they would ever need to have a happy and fulfilled life.
Yes, yeah.
But he asked them to walk in a faith relationship with him, and they didn't. Using the example of those who fervently believe in evolution, it makes me think of folks like the Apostle Paul.
Yeah.
Very zealous for the law and for what he believed was right.
Yeah.
And God had to knock him off his high horse.
Yeah.
And show him the light. And then he became probably one of the greatest apostles.
Yeah.
Greatest missionary probably that we have ever had.
Yeah.
In furthering the gospel. And that really is the beauty of the whole gospel message, is that, yes, we rebelled against God. We walked, or we chose to go away from him, but yet he wasn't finished.
No, he wasn't.
He still had a plan, and he made a way for us to be reconciled to him through Jesus becoming a man, and living among us, dying for us, and having now opened that way of eternal life and relationship for anyone who will repent and choose to believe in him.
That's right.
And that is the best life to live.
Yeah.
It's one fully surrendered and committed to him. Well, Ron, we appreciate you joining us today and sharing your life experiences and knowledge on this subject, and just really, really appreciate it.
Oh, I love the work you guys are doing here. Praise God for that. I wish more and more that the churches would develop involvement in this too.
Absolutely. Listeners, we need you to be active ambassadors for Christ and go to your home churches and really get this message going, because it is exciting to see what God does when his people put faith in him. This podcast is produced by the Creation Ministries of the Ozarks, which also operates the Creation Experience Museum in Branson, Missouri. If you're in the Branson area, come visit us and get a free guided tour and see how science confirms the Bible. You can book your free tour at creationexperiencemuseum.com or call us at 417-561-0750. We encourage you to follow us on Instagram and Facebook. On behalf of our entire team, I'm Preston Knapp, inviting you to join us again next time as we continue to explore the marvels of God's creation and grow in our love for Christ.